The programme for government commits the executive to reducing our greenhouse emissions by 25% by 2025. Of course, the Environment Minister doesn't believe in man-made climate change and famously asked central government not to pollute our local tellies with their climate change propaganda. However, on Tuesday, the Assembly voted in favour of Sammy Wilson launching his own advertising campaign to help meet the executive's own targets. So, why is the vote happening again tomorrow? Only this time, it's no longer a green issue, it's an orange one too. To explain and discuss, Reg Empey and Alisdair McDonnell are here. Thanks for joining us. Reg Empey, this vote, what was voted on the other day was an amendment. Tomorrow we'll have the full vote, but it'll be subject to cross-community voting, even though it's about climate change, which surely is something that affects green and orange equally.
Well, of course it is. My party put this motion down, and it's a take note. We note with concern the decision of the Environment Minister not to allow the broadcasting of an advertising campaign that was designed in London. Now, I think most people in this country don't regard Sammy's attitude as being particularly on message. In fact, most people think it's crazy, including many of his own colleagues.
Well, 30 of them signed the petition of concern.
I know they have, but what they're doing, they're using this technique which was designed to protect each major section of the community from having its rights trampled on in Stormont, to protect this minister from his own folly. And I think it's not the right issue to use it on. The Assembly was very clear in its vote last week, overwhelmingly decided to support the motion, but it's only a take-note motion. It's not instructing him, and therefore I think it's an overreaction. OK, well, Alisdair McDonnell, is it an abusive process?
Yes, I think it's an abusive process. I think the cross-community voting technique and the petition of concern technique was a very good defensive mechanism that was built into our settlement. And it demands, just for the sake of your viewers, it demands that either 50% of a vote with both 50% of nationalists and unionists supporting an issue, or else that there's a 60% with at least 40% on each side. A very good, safe system on sensitive issues, key issues that are sensitive to one or other, or indeed to both communities. But to use it to protect Sammy's crazy position is a prostitution of the whole thing, and it makes a laughingstock out of not just the issue, but out of the Assembly itself.
But Arlene, why is the DUP, it's always given Sammy Wilson some latitude on this issue in a sense, to have his own personal views, but the executive is signed up to reducing greenhouse gases, and yet 30 of your members have signed a petition of concern to turn this into a sectarian issue to ensure that your minister is not embarrassed.
It's not a sectarian issue, and in fact you're very right about our targets for cutting down on greenhouse gases, and that's one of the reasons why just before the debate, the private members' debate in relation to Sammy, I brought through the Northern Ireland Renewables obligation, which looks at how we can incentivise renewable energy, how we can bring that forward. And in fact, I was very disappointed that nobody from either the Ulster Unionist Party or the SDLP spoke on that very important piece of legislation, which will actually mean that we can take forward renewables in Northern Ireland in a more incentivised way. But what we are actually doing is saying that this motion is a stunt, it should be treated as a stunt, and we should really get on and deal with renewables in a meaningful way. If it is just
a stunt, then why not let the vote go through? Why not use this procedure? You're obviously very sensitive about it.
No, we're not sensitive about it. What we're saying is it is a stunt, and as a result of that, we put down the petition of concern to say that it would be meaningless. OK. Alisdair
McDonnell, is this not all about the ugly scaffolding that Mark Durkan referred to before that needs to perhaps be dismantled? The Good Friday Agreement, effectively everything now is being reduced to a sectarian headcount.
Well, that may be a view. I don't see it as a view. I see the issue here still as being our environmental future going forward. I see the issue as being how we protect our environment and how we protect against CO2 emissions. And therefore, I think Sammy is definitely at odds with his department, and indeed even at odds with the committee and the Assembly. And there is a serious issue there, and I think it's totally wrong to use this vital protection measure, and I see it as vital to both communities in the short term. And, I think it's totally wrong, and that is the mistake. And when I have fully respect Arlene as the previous minister in the position, as she did a lot of good work there, but nevertheless, Sammy's making a bit of a joke out of the whole thing.
Well, Reg Empey, does it go beyond the climate change issue, though, simply into how things are run now at Stormont, that effectively the two big parties can never be challenged because they can use this mechanism to ensure that even, as you say, a take-note motion is doomed to failure?
The structure was put in there to protect, to give people the incentive and the sufficient confidence to participate in the institutions. That was the deal was done 10, 11 years ago for good reasons. And we will always have to have some mechanism. If it's not this, maybe it's a weighted majority, and that might be a way of moving away from what you call this ugly scaffolding. But this particular issue is very simple. It was merely a take-note motion to say we should that we rejected the idea that Sammy blocked these advertisements that were made in London. And we have targets to meet. Now, the Environment Committee has already passed a vote of no confidence in him on this issue. And the DUP doesn't need to do this tomorrow because it's simply a take-note motion. He's already had the committee come out against him. So I think it's an overreaction. But the serious point is that his analysis on the environment is shared really by very few people. And we all have problems. You could look at your television screens and what's happening around the world, and to say that man is having no impact on the climate is barking mad. Nobody believes it. So I think it's an overreaction, and I think it's an abuse of the system.
Well, is the DUP embarrassed about its Environment Minister? You're trying to avoid any future headlines about the Minister being censured in his own assembly. Is that what this is all about?
No, we're not embarrassed by Sammy at all, because we think he's doing a good job, particularly in relation to planning. I think he's doing an excellent job there, bringing forward planning reform proposals. And indeed, if you look at the reason why Sammy decided not to back the Act on CO2 advertisement, it was more about a constitutional arrangement. If you look at the original letter, which has now been made available under Freedom of Information, what he was angry about at that time was the fact that this was a devolved matter and the Westminster Parliament had decided to go ahead and show these advertisements without consulting either the Scottish or ourselves in relation to what should happen.
Constitutional issue then.